Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fit for Millions. I am Jasmine LeSanker, and today we're going to be discussing in this episode why I left a successful fitness career to follow my purpose. This show is going to be especially for women who know that they are called to something bigger. I have a special guest with me, and she is going to be our podcast host for today. Vina, take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vina Nguyen, and I have the honor of interviewing Jasmine LeSanker. So let's get right into it.
Okay.
Tell us where you started as far as the fitness career and what it looked like from the outside.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So I started as a professional dancer and I became a single mother at the age of 24. Like any single mother, I needed to make more money, and the professional dance career of performing just was not going to cut it, right? And so I started teaching dance classes to young children, and it was in alignment with my son being in daycare, so it worked, but it still just wasn't enough. And I contacted a friend who I noticed on social media was teaching Zumba all over the world, and he seemed like he was doing really well for himself. Got on the phone with him, and he told me to get my Zumba certification. At the time, I didn't even know what Zumba was, but he said that I could definitely do it. Long and behold, it was a dance fitness certification. And Zumba at the time was just really starting to become really popular. I landed my first audition at an Equinox in Long Island as a dance fitness instructor. So they didn't necessarily hire me for Zumba, but because they needed a dance instructor for fitness, I fit the bill and I had a certification. To be honest with you, that class was not the best. I bombed my first class. I literally started off with a class of about 35 people, and before the hour was over, I think I was left with 3.
That's impressive.
Yeah, not at all.
That's impressive.
I did not have the confidence that I have now, but I did have the tenacity to continue to keep trying. And, there was a part of me that never wanted to go back. But the manager at the time convinced me that I just had to get back on that horse and try again. And so I did. And I continued to not do well. And eventually they took the class off the schedule because it just did so poorly. And then I literally did not have a class. I started getting sub opportunities to become a substitute for some of the other fitness instructors that were teaching Zumba. And I jumped on it right away. It was an opportunity for me to work and also to get in front of a crowd. And this is where I started to shine.
The crowd did stay, right?
Yeah, they
Okay,
did
okay,
stay.
okay.
So, when you become a substitute in the fitness arena, people come, they're expecting their favorite instructor, but a lot of times people will give the sub a chance, and they did. And I think that by the time I had had enough classes where I had bombed, I started to learn from that.
Right.
And I taught the Zumba class and I got rave reviews. I continued to be a substitute teacher for more fitness classes, specifically Zumba. And the word started to get out that I was a great sub. So if anybody was going to be out, they were like, "Yeah, get that girl Jasmine. She's good." And that's how I got started.
I love that. I love that. It went from 30 to 3, and you stayed in it. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, allow me to ask you this follow-up question, right? But going from 30 to 3, walk me through what you've built, because from that you opened up Diva Dance, correct?
I
You
did.
you were in the fitness industry now. You had a regional position and you were in a leadership role at Equinox, Lifetime. Now, from the outside, it looks like success. right? What did it look like from the inside?
Well, on the outside, yeah, it was super successful. It was so much fun to start a business. Obviously, after time and many classes, I created a devout following. I started teaching classes not only at Equinox, but other local gyms and small boutique studios. And I really started to gain traction with members, and my retention rate was really high. I was a quick learner. I also was able to scale pretty quickly. I started my business because after teaching all over, um, my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and I really needed to figure out the best way forward and how to diversify my schedule, optimize really,
Right.
and condense it to less time teaching all over the place and traveling all over the place teaching all these Zumba classes to one location where I could maximize my time and increase my revenue, and be able to be with my son because he needed me more than ever. For 5 years, I ran Diva. It was super successful. I made my first 7 figures within the first year, which was pretty outstanding for a young 30-year-old African American girl on the North Shore of Long Island. Um, I then moved to Connecticut. I got married and had a second child, and this was just a decision that we made at the time. I sold the business and became a regional manager. I was over 3 locations. Spent about 10 years prior to that at Equinox as a group fitness instructor, and I was able to understand the business from a instructor's perspective. Then I evolved into a Pilates instructor because I got my certification from Equinox, and I understood sales and how to generate a business within a business. So that really helped to equip me for that next leadership role, becoming a regional, because I understood business and obviously I had already run my own business. From there, I moved into a studio leader position at a Lifetime Athletic Club. This was in 2020, right after the pandemic had hit. A lot of gyms closed, but then later on in that year, they started to reopen, and I became the leader and the person to rebuild that business after COVID.
That must have been tough.
Yeah, it was.
Well, thank you for sharing and giving us the insight on that. What was the moment when you realized that everything you've achieved on paper wasn't matching up with what you felt in your spirit? Would you mind speaking on why God had shifted you?
Yeah, Bina. So in 2024, I was looking for career growth, and there was none available in my current role. I was looking to be challenged, and unfortunately, there just wasn't any opportunities that were afforded to me, at the club in my leadership position. And, that's sometimes the situation that you're unfortunately in a corporate setting, right? So I spent time away from my family a lot, working a lot of hours, no work life balance. I always knew that God had something bigger for me, but I just couldn't really figure out what it was, because when you're busy and you're working 40 hours, by the time you get home, you're so burnt out and tired and peopled out. You just want to lay down and go to sleep, and you just hope that you have the energy to get up tomorrow and do it all over again, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always had this sense that there was a bigger calling. There was something else God wanted to do with my life. I had achieved becoming the very first elite performer, at that Lifetime location when it first
Watch out.
opened. Thank you. Obviously at this time I had a regional manager under my belt, operating 3 locations. I had built a business on my own. I had made the 7 figures from that business. I had rebuilt another business as a leader at Lifetime after COVID, which was a huge accomplishment, getting everything back to the way it was pre-COVID, was not an easy task, and I was able to do that. And something just wasn't in alignment anymore, and I think God was trying to prepare me for the next season.
Well said. Now, for the people that have been following you, which I have been following you, we know that you went through a health challenge that became a turning point, right?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, and share as much as you're comfortable with about what that season took you through and what stirred you up.
So yeah, it actually happened March of 2025. I felt fine and really didn't have any symptoms per se. I had a lump in my breast that we weren't sure what it was. I got it tested, and it, unfortunately came back as breast cancer. It was stage 3. It had spread to my lymph nodes, and at the time we just had to move really quickly. I don't even think I had time to really process everything that was happening to me, but I knew that I had to act fast and get ahead of it. I went through chemotherapy treatment pretty quickly, had 8 rounds of that. Not too long after that, I ended up having surgery. They removed both breasts and the lump, and I also had 4 lymph nodes removed out of my right axilla, which is under the armpit. Pretty extensive surgery, really painful, lots of side effects from medications, but God is so good because I was able to make a full recovery. In that time, God slowed me down through the healing process and treatments. I was able to spend time with Him, praying and listening and journaling. And then I had this enlightenment moment where God told me to start creating again and to create content, to have people hear my voice. And at the time, I kind of pushed this away because, again, as much as I love to be in front of people in a classroom, I wasn't really comfortable being in front of a camera, speaking to a camera, and, all the things that come from that. And also, I am not tech savvy for people who don't know me. The thought of editing videos, I just, cringed at the thought of me editing a video. And so I kind of pushed that away. But deep down, God knows that I was going to be obedient. And He showed me that women needed help in business and getting started in business. And so I knew at some point I was going to do something to help them.
Okay, well, I guess that rolls right into my next question here.
Yeah.
You mentioned that He slowed you down, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Him slowing you down, how did God begin to show you that there was something else that He was calling you to do, and what that process looked like through your lens?
Yeah, so God really does speak in stillness. When we're busy and we're distracted, it's really hard to hear God's voice. So in those quiet moments when I would sit outside after my chemo treatments on my back porch and write in my journal, I would hear God clearly, and I was able to discern His voice from my voice. Because the more you're in the Word and the more that you are familiar with the way God speaks, because you have the Word as a guideline, you're really able to discern His voice and hear clearly what He has for you and what He's trying to communicate to you. Um, you know, again, the thought of me creating content and putting it on social media, I had a lot of reservations and hesitations. Because like I said before, I'm not tech savvy. I don't feel really comfortable in front of a camera, knowing that like I'm speaking to a camera, not to live people. The thought of that just like makes me cringe.
A little
But
awkward, right?
super, super awkward, Mina. Like you have no idea. But God's voice just got louder and louder. And what I mean by louder, it was clearer that this is what God wanted me to do. And, things really do start happening in the doing. And I knew that I needed to just be obedient, regardless of my own fears and hesitations.
I'm at a loss for words because it's something that I can relate to, So thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
us. God is good.
All the time.
Amen. Okay, well, with him shifting you out and you being obedient, how did you feel walking away from something that you were genuinely good at because you've mastered the fitness world.
Yeah.
I've actually been to your classes, and I will say I you've spoiled me.
Oh boy.
It's difficult for me to go and work out with other people, or even a cycle class to a Pilates class, a bar class. I am very much spoiled. So with him shifting you out, it became a part of your identity. This is completely different. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no.
Fitness and dancing, and
Yeah, no.
please do tell, Jasmine.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question, actually. It isn't easy to be known for something for a huge portion of your life. And then, to people on the outside, it looks really strange. But I knew that season was up. Like I said, walking with God, I mean, it wasn't my first time with God and walking with him, right? But um, just having the moments to slow down once the cancer diagnosis happened and the treatment started, I really was able to draw closer to God in a new way and hear him and his voice, and the discernment was clearer. And I knew that season was up. And really, it just boils down to, like I said before, just being obedient. Obedience brings blessings.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk away from this interview and just keep saying be
That's right.
obedient.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Now, what were people saying when you started to act on these moves towards doing something new, right?
Hmm.
How did you learn how to tune the outside noise out?
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of noise to tune out.
Well,
So
okay. Fair enough.
I'll just say that.
It's been silent, right?
Yeah, it was actually the opposite. So it was actually really quiet. I was no longer working at my previous job as a leader anymore. And, as much as it was amazing to have the phone calls and the text messages and people checking on you, at this time in my journey, that had all quieted down, and I felt really isolated. um, I could kind of tell, like, just by being on social media, writing a few things, people were a little confused. Um, and I knew it was probably because they just didn't understand. Like,
Right.
the same thing you asked me, like, why? We all loved her. Like you said, you were spoiled, and
Yeah,
we
selfishly, I would like you to go back.
yeah. And I think for most people, it was kind of the same thing. Like,
Right.
they just wanted me to go back to being there and being a part of my classes in that community. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that my team missed me being a leader there, as they had conveyed many times throughout my leave. But I just had to stay true to what I knew God was telling me to do. And I didn't want to be a disappointment to anyone, but you have to allow God's voice to be louder than anyone else's voice.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
Yeah. But that's all just how I felt, you know.
Well, it comes with obedience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, just to kind of go off of that, I had went to your Instagram page and I was like, "Whoa, facelift." So it was a little it took me by surprise for sure.
Yeah.
Tell us what was the final like push for you to fully embark on this journey? Was it a conversation, a prayer? What
Mm.
was the moment of clarity to leave the fitness industry completely behind?
Yeah, I think it was the moment of clarity.
Mm,
um like I said, getting closer to God, hearing his voice, it just became clearer. And I think for most people, asking themselves that question, like, how do you get clarity, how do you distinguish his voice, you have to really start having and building a relationship with God. And I
right.
wouldn't wait until things happen to establish a relationship with God. Establishing a relationship with God should be ongoing,
Mm,
um, and not just in the moments where you need Him,
right.
because it's like a friend. You wouldn't just pick up a phone and call a friend every time you need them. You would build a relationship, if that's a true friend, and be talking to them, throughout your life. And so with God, it was the same way. And the closer you get to your destination with God, the more confident you start to feel about the decision that you made.
You better preach, girl.
Oh, I'm not a preacher.
All right. Well, I guess the timing was right, right?
Absolutely.
All in God's time. You took this major leap
Hmm.
at the age of 40. What was going through your mind at that point? Did you feel as if it was too late or was it right on time?
Yeah. So at 40, I really felt like I had a lot of life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, when I look back over my life, and this isn't for everybody, but this is just how I felt.
Right.
At 20, I don't think I had enough experience, because I was just kind of starting out in the fitness industry. I was still getting certifications in multiple modalities. I was still figuring out who I was and identifying what type of instructor I wanted to be, and all the nuances that come with that. And then at 30, yeah, I started a business at 30, but I was still learning, right? I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't have a mentor or a business consultant, like, someone like me walking me through the process. And so, you know, as many mistakes as I made, I really had to turn them into lessons and learn from the mistakes how to run the business, and all the minutia of getting a business up and running from the ground up. So, that was pretty much my early 30s. And then transitioning into marriage and having another child, and then, having a child that was on the spectrum. That was, a lot. And any parent who has a child with special needs can understand that that is a whole different job and component to being a wife and also running a business. So now, it was better suited for me to go into a more of a leadership position, where I had a little bit more structure to my finances. And then we were moving to a whole nother state, because it was just a better fit for our family overall. So, by the time I reached 40 now, I've had all of these amazing experiences, and I was able to grow and learn so much from them, not even just on the business side, but on the service side of the industry. And I understood more about people and how to problem solve by the time I reached 40.
Right.
I had mentored people, and I just feel like I'm a more established leader now that I'm 40.
Well, I hear 40 is the new 30s anyway, so I think
Okay.
you're doing well. You're doing well. What would you say to the person who feels like their window has passed?
Yeah.
That they're
Too late.
it's too late. It
Yeah.
feels as you get older, you feel like it's too hard to get reestablished, right? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, well, anything new is never easy in the beginning, right? Because as humans, I don't think we embrace change, even though change is inevitable, right? We change
Yeah.
each and every day. We live another day, which is a blessing. It's never too late. It makes me think of Mark 10:27, where it talks about you can do all things with God, and all things are possible with God.
Amen.
And that's why it's never too late. No matter your age, if God is with you, he will make it possible for you.
Mm,
He will make provisions for you. So your timing and God's timing is not the same.
thank you.
Hmm.
So, for anyone that is older, it's not too late.
Never too late.
It's not too late. Well, tell us about the vision, right?
Hmm.
For Fit for Millions and what the purpose of building this here.
Yeah.
Tell us
So,
about it.
you know, I just built a business that delivered a solution to problems, right? So, in the time that I spent alone, I also obviously was still in communication with different women. And I noticed that there were women who had businesses that weren't scaling. And there were many different reasons why it wasn't scaling. And I would, because now I had the time,
Mhm.
I was giving my opinion and suggestions and really utilizing all of the experiences that I've had in working for other people's businesses and also running my own businesses and helping them navigate whatever challenges or pain points they were having. And then on the flip side of that, there were women that didn't want to work in their jobs anymore. They didn't like working 9 to 5 because they needed more time back into their lives for their children, and they had no work life balance, and they now wanted to enter entrepreneurship and start their own business, but just really didn't know how to do it, or had an idea but didn't know how to get clarity. And so having those conversations with them, I was mentoring them in how to get started
Right.
and how to find their purpose and how to really pull the business that was on the inside of them out of them.
That's inspiring. That's inspiring. Well, I actually have a Rubik's cube in the back here. If you can solve that problem, that would be great.
Yeah, no, can't help you with the Rubik's
Okay.
Cube.
Okay. Well, looking back at every role, right? Every title that you've been in, the leadership position, the season that you've walked through, how do you see those experiences now? What were they detours, or were they preparing you for exactly where you are now?
Yeah, no, great question. They definitely were preparing me for everything.
Mm,
The cancer prepared me for how to tackle a pivot like this and
right.
to be fearless.
Mm,
Running my own business, it definitely showed me what's possible when you bet on yourself
mm,
in business. Seriously. Um, and leading teams, it really helped to show me how to care for people in a deeper way. Because truly, when you lead people, you have to lead by example, and you
mhm.
really have to show care and empathy in ways that really go beyond just the job. So, yeah. And serving people, whether it was a client or just the people around you in those businesses, it really taught me how to transform people's lives,
Right.
as their trainer, as their fitness instructor. Even if it was someone who was having a hard time at work in a different department, having conversations with them, being able to encourage them. How are you transformative? How are
Mm.
you transforming people's lives every single day? So, with all those experiences, I think it was preparing me for exactly what I'm doing today.
Talk about obedience,
Hmm.
right? Well, I guess I'll just remove the detour because it wasn't a detour, as you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Because all of that have built you into the woman that you are today, and I'm grateful to interview you,
Thank
Jasmine.
you. Thank you. It's
Um,
an honor to have you interview me.
So let me ask you, when did you know that this was God's plan and not yours?
It's simple, Vina. I believe that everything in our lives is God's plan.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And I'll say something else about that. The bravest thing that anyone can do is to trust what God put in you
Mm.
over what the world tells you to stay in. And for any woman that's listening that think it's too late or they're too old or their time has passed, I want you to know that it's never too late to walk into your assignment because God created it just for you. God
Amen.
needs you to walk into your assignment. There's a purpose and there's people that need you more than you know.
That touched me. That touched me. I feel like I'm about to step out and I need your help.
I got
I
you.
need your help. All right, Jasmine. Well, I took some time out of your day, but if you could just recap and leave us with a sentence to sum everything up, that would be great.
Yeah. For anybody that's listening, if I don't leave you with anything else, I want you to know that you are stronger than you know.
I used to say that in class when you once upon a time when you taught. So
And it still
and
remains true to this day. You
that
are stronger than you know.
that is your that is your famous line,
Yeah,
man.
it is.
You know. All right. Well, tell us what can we expect on the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. So, um, next time we're going to be talking about what 15 years and the leadership positions that I've had, what it taught me about running businesses. So I
Oh, so
think it'll be
we're
a
gonna
good one.
get into deep water with
Yeah,
this one, huh?
we're going to get into it. We're going to
Okay.
talk about it.
All
So
right.
anybody that wants to know what 15 years taught me and how to run a business, what I learned, tune in.
Well, then let us know what you need us to do now, then, Jasmine.
Well, you know what to do. Follow, subscribe, and for every woman that's listening to this, share this with another woman in business or thinking about business. And as always, you know that we love you. God bless you and your business. And we'll see you in the next one.